Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike Rambuya, and today we're going to have another deck profile video, but not for Digimon. I'm going to talk about a deck from a game that also consumes a good amount of my wallet, but has a very different play style. We're going to talk about Lorcana, and Lorcana is very different because it's not so much about, hey, I want to knock out my opponent first. It's going to be more about a race against my opponent to earn enough points. In Lorcana, you have to earn 20 points, or lore is what they call it, to win the game. So this is very much going to be not so much I need to knock my opponent out as much as I just need to maybe create some tripping hazard. Now, I've done my best to stick with the game since set 1, but it's definitely my more casual game. It's not one that takes up a good portion of my time. So these deck profiles are going to be a bit different because it's going mainly because the builds are very going to be scrapped together. Whatever I get from the starter deck and the packs I buy, that's what I'm going to use. I don't buy too many singles for this to create decks. I kind of just like, okay, here's what I have available to me. I'm going, and this is the best deck I can make with it. So, without further ado, let's talk about one of my favorite decks from the game so far, and that is a villains deck. I kind of fell in love with the villains deck from day one because of Hades, King of Olympus. The fact that this character gets more lore um, for every villain you have in play, and later sets did add more villains, and they also added a few other mechanics, which will explain as we go into the video. But um, this Hades King of Olympus was in one of the first starter decks, so I was really excited to get him and build a deck around that, and I've kind of just kept growing it as much as I can as we move forward. So, the goals of this deck are to fill the board with villains, protect the villains, and control your next draw. That's kind of a more sub goal I have, just because I found it to be a very interesting mechanic of certain villain cards had to look at the top of your deck and either leave it on the top or put it at the bottom. And so I'm like, hey, that's actually really useful if I know what my next draw is going to be or what it shouldn't be, then um, there is a mechanic that allows me to draw, and that way I can get the cards I need to get them on the field, and so they are ready to go. So, there's kind of several different cards in Lorcana. We're going to talk about character cards first, and we're going to do this by play cost as we go down, just because characters make up most of this deck, mainly because we're looking for villains. So, starting with our level 1s, we're running 2 of Maleficent, Binding Her Time. She's a 1 strength, 1 defense, 2 lore. So how you gain points in this game is your characters can either challenge or quest. Challenge is you are attacking your other opponent's characters or glimmers, as they are referenced to. Um, and that way you can kind of eliminate their point generation on their side. Questing is basically when you suspend your glimmer, your characters, to gain the lore that's on the card. So the little white diamond icon is how much lore they have, where um, the shield is like their life, and the circle and the number in the circle is their attack power. Now, uh, damage is permanent and can only be it's not like in Magic where at the beginning of your turn it regenerates. It is permanent throughout, but there are ways to heal your characters. So we're doing Maleficent, Biding Her Time, just a cheap one to get out on the field. There's also then we're running 2 copies of that. We're running 2 copies of Diablo, Faithful Pet. Has the ability of whenever you play a character named Maleficent, you may look at the top deck of your card and either put it on the top or put it to the bottom of your deck. So this is where the whole see what I'm drawing next, see if I want that. And then we're running 3 copies of the Queen, Regional Monarch. It's just a 2/2, one lore, kind of more of a basic card you have. You probably noticed that around the number, there's either just the design around the number, or there's a circle design around it as well. So Lorcana does not have a mana system similar to Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, to where you have dedicated cards for your energy or for your lands to tap to play cards. You actually kind of have to sacrifice cards from your hand. So these cards with the circle icon around it, um, around the cost, that's how you create your Inkwell, your mana pool, for your Magic the Gathering folks, and you tap those to play the characters. That's why these decks are kind of interesting, because you don't want so many copies. Your number of copies isn't so much about, hey, I just want to have these mana on the field, as much as, hey, I want to be able to dump this and still have one available to play. So there's our level one. There's our cost ones. Going to the cost twos, we're going to use Yzma Alchemist. Whenever this character quest, look at the top card of your deck, put it on the top or bottom. Again, just trying to control the draw. Dr. Falsier, the Charlatan, he has the ability Challenger, gain +2. So the Challenger effect basically says, hey, if this character is going to go into a fight, give him a boost. So that's why he's a 0. So he's a 0/4. So basically, if he is challenged, he does no damage back. But if he does the challenging, he then gains that bonus. And that's kind of where it kind of more comes from, when you have those challengers. Like, hey, I'm going to swing, but I want to more use these guys to swing because they hit a bit harder. Next is Magica Dispel Ambitious Witch. She's a 2/3, one lore, and then we have Loof. His ability is, if you have a character named Gaston, you pay less to play this character. So basically, if you already have a Gaston on the field and you want to get him on the field to kind of generate more lore, he now becomes one less. So again, if you're running short on your Inkwell, you have the ability to play a character for cheaper. Next is our cost threes. We're running one of Maleficent, Vixen Partygorder. When this character quests, you may choose and discard one. You may discard a card and discard a card to return a character, item, or location from your yes, and discard a card to return a chosen character, item, or location of cost 3 or less to the player's hand. A few of these cards came out in the latest set, Shimmering Sky, and basically this is a way to get rid of some things on your opponent's field. We'll talk about locations later. We'll talk about items and locations later. They're more like permanent for those who play Magic, or cards that stay on the field after they are played. But 0/4, so definitely a more defensive card to use, and it gets 2 lore every time. Next, we're going to use Jafar, a Lamp Thief. We're going to use 3 of those. When you play this card, look at the top 2 cards. You place one on the top, one on the bottom. And then we have Maleficent, Sorceress. When I play this character, I draw a card. Kind of a good way to play out. Both these are 2/2. Jafar is 2 lore. Maleficent is a 1 lore. Sorry, I'm going to have to start remembering all these different things to point out. But yeah, so if you previously used the card to see what's on the top of your deck and you want to draw it, you play out Maleficent. Next is Gaston, Baritone Bully. He has the Singer feat, and so there are song actions in the game to where you can use a singer to basically tap them rather than tap your Inkwell to play the action. We use 4 of those. Again, just good to have a singer and put enough in your deck that you can put some in your Inkwell. Next is the Queen of Hearts, who has the we just play one of those. It's a 3/3, 1 lore. Whenever this character quests, your other villain characters get +1 lore for the turn. So this is another one to where you want to quest this character first, and then use that to boost your other um, villains. So when they quest, they get you more lore, and so you can get to that 20 a lot quicker. This definitely is going to help out with Hades. We will talk about him later. For our cost forwards, we're using Jafar, Wicked Sorcerer. He's a challenger +3, so he's a 2/2. He's a 2/5, and then when he goes in challenges, he becomes a 5/5. So again, just another way to like, hey, these guys are bull. Your opponent's Glimmer is bullying some of your Glimmer. Time to take him out. That way, you can protect your villains. Doctor Fossilier, sorry. Suave Opportunist. He has Evasion. Evasion basically says that only other characters with Evasion can hit you. Think of it like flying, except for there hasn't been a reach mechanic added yet. So, in those familiar with Magic the Gathering, flying creatures can only attack other flying creatures in the game. And we're using 3 copies of that. Next is Hades, Lord of the Underworld. We're using 3 of those. He's a 3/2, 1 Laura, 1 lore card. When I play this card, I can return a character card from your Discord to your hand. Basically, if you had a character that got eliminated and you want to bring him back, you just play Hades to kind of get him back on the field, get him back in your hand, so then you can get back him on the field. For 5 costs, we're running 1 of Maleficent, Mistress of All Evil, 2/3, earns 2 lore when questing. Whenever this character quests, you may draw a card. During your turn, when you draw a card, you may move 1 damage counter from chosen character to chosen opposing character. So this was kind of a newer mechanic introduced in the 3rd set to where you can actually move damage around, and so it kind of got around opponents that you couldn't hit because you didn't have invasion of whatnot. So rather than be like, hey, I need to swing at you, it's like, hey, I'm just gonna move my damage onto you. Um, so 2 lore, that's pretty significant. It is a higher paying cost, but again, it goes well with controlling what you draw. If you use a previous effect to see what's at the top of your deck, and then you quest with Maleficent, after you maybe use the Queen of Hearts to quest to make it give Maleficent 1 more lore. So now Maleficent quests for 3 lore, so that gives you 3 points. You get to draw the card. You know what card it's going to be, so then you know it's like, yes, I want this card, and then you can move damage counters. Next, we're going to use 2 of the Queen, the Commanding Presence, a 4/3, 2 lore points. This character has Shift. So Shift is a mechanic that allows you to play a card on top of another card at a lower cost. So Shift 2 says I can pay 2 rather than the 5, and I just play on top of another character named the Queen. And that's kind of how Shift works. It's similar to evolving in Pokemon, but it's more about lowering the cost. Uh, this does so. Her ability is whenever this character quests, I choose an opposing character to get -4 will, which is their attack power. This turn, and I choose and give a character of my choice +4 will this turn. So basically, I make an opponent weaker and I make one of my stronger. So if I want to go challenge, I have a better chance of banishing or killing their Glimmer, and hopefully not taking too much damage myself and keep them on the field. For we don't have any 6, so we're gonna jump up to 7. 2 more shift cards. We have Dr. Falsier, Agent Provocateur. Excuse me. So you can, he's a 4/5, costs usually 7. You can shift onto another Dr. Falsier for 5. 3 earns 3 lower points when questing. When one of your other characters is banished in a challenge, you may turn that card to your hand. So basically, this is a way to keep your characters still in play. So even, especially if you're using a challenger character that you are basically wanting to use to try to wipe out some of your opponent's either offensive power or lore generation, you can do that, and then Dr. Faustier's effect will bring them back to your hand. So we're using two of those. And then the other one is Magic Dispel, the Midas Touch. Shift 5, cost regular 7. It's a 4/6. No lore. However, when this character quests, you gain lore equal to the cost of one of your items in play. So this is very interesting. If you use like the Queen of Hearts, they already get one lore, but this also is based on the play cost of the item. This deck doesn't run too many items, so it's not going to be a big deal, but they are. But this is kind of a more easy way to gain lore, and it bounces off like the Queen of Hearts, I think, very well. Now time to talk about the main focus of the deck and what inspired this is Hades, King of Olympus. He's an 8 cost. You can shift him onto another Hades for 6 instead. He's a 6/7 and earns 1 lore point when questing. We run 2 of those. This character gets 1 plus gets an extra lore for each other villain character you have in play. So, since this deck is mostly villains, this shouldn't be hard to boost up. Plus, if you give, plus with the Queen of Hearts, which gives your other villains +1, so now it's already bumped up to a 2. With the Queen of Hearts, and now it bumps up to a 3. And let's say you have a Maleficent, now it's a 4. And you can kind of see if you keep your characters on the field, um, this can definitely get up there in lower points, and that way when you quest, it accumulates that, getting you to that 20 much quicker. That's going to do it for characters. Now we're going to actions. Actions are kind of like your spell cards. There are two styles of actions. You have your regular actions like control your temper. It is a 1 cost. We're using 2 of those. And chosen character gets -2 willpower this turn. So if you're looking to hit one of your opponent's characters, but want to not take as much damage, that's what you do. So that's just a pure action. The other ones you have are song actions, similar to painting the roses red. If you have a character, so what singing does is that you can actually suspend a character that either costs the amount that the card costs, and that way you can do it for free and not tap your Inkwell. That's why singers, especially if you a deck that's used a lot of songs, that's why singers are so great, because some singers are actually worth more than what their play cost is. So like we saw with Gaston, Gaston is a singer 5, so that means he can be tapped to sing songs up to cost 5 or lower. I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, so he can be used to sing songs at a higher cost, even though he's a lower cost character, and not have to affect the other ones. And his chosen character gets -1 for the turn, and then I draw a card. So basically, if I know what my top card is, I want to draw it, and I want to say, hey, you can't hit as hard as you can. Next is Be Our Guest. We're going to run 2 of those. It is a 2 cost. It is a song, so you just need a character of cost 2 or more to sing the song for free, so you don't tap your inkwell. You look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal 1 character card and put it in your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your deck. That's if you're just looking for certain cards. Great way to do that. And then next is Friends on the Other Side. We're running 3 copies of that. It is a Singer 3. You need a character of 3 or more tap to sing the song for free, and that you just draw 2 cards. So again, if you know what cards you have on top, great way to get them. Next are items. Items, like I said, are permanent. They stay on the field until they are either banished or delete or banished by one of your opponent's effects. So we just won 3 items, mainly because I'm not too worried about using items to gain lore, to do extra effects, because I feel like my character cards do that enough, and a lot more of it's just having them present. So we have Ursula's Cauldron, 2 cost. You can on during turn you can tap it. I look at the top 2 cards on my deck. I put 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. Again, just trying to control your draw. Next is the Sorcerer's Spellbook. It's a 3 cost item. You can actually tap it and pay 1 inkwell or pay 1 ink to gain a lore. So there's just a little free ink generation. And next we have the half Haxwell Crown. It has two effects. Both cost you 2. You gotta tap it, pay 2 to draw a card. Again, if you know what card is coming up next, you want to grab it. That's how you do it. Or you can tap it, pay 2, and discard a card to exert a chosen character. So you're like, hey, I want to swing at this character, but he's not exerted. Sorry, I forgot to clarify. You can only challenge other exerted characters. So basically, you can only challenge or attack suspended characters. This, yes, it costs 2, and you have to tap it and get rid of a card in your hand, but it does allow you to exert one of your opponent's characters, causing a lot of grief, and get rid of it that way. And last but not least is locations. So locations is a newer mechanic. It was introduced in the third set, and basically what you can do is that you can move characters into these locations. So you play locations at the pay cost of 3. It has a move cost of 2 ink to pay it. So that's the value on the left there. And then it has a toughness of 8. Location can actually be attacked, and there are cards specifically saying that they heal locations. Um, but as you can tell from the text, the characters can't be challenged while here. It also has 1 lore point. Locations are also your passive lore generation. At the beginning of your turn, they generate the lore that's indicated on their card. So every turn, I'm getting 1 lore point just for having this on the field. And characters can't be challenged. So if I have cards like the Maleficent or the Queen of Hearts or even Hades himself, and I want to protect them from being challenged, this is a great place to put them. You cannot put characters straight here when they play. You have to play them outside the location and then pay to move them into it. But this is kind of a general one. I run 2 copies of it. There aren't really, to me, this is kind of the best location to use for this style of deck because I'm more focusing on protecting my villains and keeping them in play, and so I can boost up Hades or have them be boosted by the Queen of Hearts. And that is it for our first Lorcana deck profile. I want to thank you guys very much for watching. I do apologize for another rambling video. Um, if you want me to go more in depth about Lorcana or Digimon and kind of more do like a beginner's guide, let me know in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions about what could be added to this deck to make it better, also leave that in the comments down below. But that is it for this video. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch it. Next week we'll go back to Digimon, and this is probably going to be either a every 2 or every other video type deal. I have plenty of Lorcana decks I want to build, but again, Lorcana's not my main game, it's kind of my side game. But I do want to talk about it because I do think it's a fun. I do think it is a fun game. So without further ado, I hope you guys have a wonderful morning, evening, or night, whatever is in your part of the world. Stay safe, enjoy your games, and we will see you next time.